Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Taking a look back at the Nebraska Cornhuskers' first win of the season against Northern Illinois. Kind of want to talk about some big takeaways. Definitely talk about the quarterback situation and some of the things that we really like that we're seeing out of Nebraska, and then some things that they still got to improve on. And we all know there's some plenty of rooms for this team to improve under Matt Rhule. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support you guys have shown, especially the Nebraska fans. Y'all know how much we like talking about this program, largely because of all the support you guys have shown the boys. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, especially with this debate, Dill and I are going to kind of get into it a little bit. Let us know in the comment section what you guys think, especially regarding the starting quarterback position. Appreciate you guys, Dill. Going to kick this one off to you. And I wanted to ask you a simple question first. Jeff Sims, Heinrich Haarberg, who do you think gives Nebraska the best chance to win heading into the rest of 2023?
I mean, it's hard to not say Haarberg right now just because you didn't see him.
He's the 1-0 starter.
He didn't make the mistakes that get you beat last. And I will, obvious caveat, they were playing Northern Illinois and the other two they're playing probably a little bit higher competition or no doubt a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So it's not obviously a fair assessment, but I mean, just what you saw in the first two games from Jeff Sims, those 4 turnovers a game or so, that's just those are catastrophic. And again, you saw them at Georgia Tech. You hope Matt Rhule and staff could kind of clean that up. I don't know that I really think that's
the most frustrating part is Matt Rhule said, because that was a question mark heading into the season, was hey, how's Jeff Sims doing with the turnovers? Matt Rhule's during fall camp, we was rarely turning the football over, gets to the game. Obviously, you've had those problems. Here's my thing. I don't really care who the starting quarterback is for Nebraska. I think Jeff Sims playing and eliminating those mistakes can give you a damn good chance to win a football game. You can say the same thing about Heinrich Haarberg. They're both really good athletes. Probably not the best, as I hit my mic, probably not the best pocket passers. My bigger problem and what I want to see from this Nebraska team is run your offense according to your quarterback, which I feel like Satterfield, the first couple games, especially with Jeff Sims in the first two, kind of forcing Jeff Sims to be a pocket passer. It's just not who he is. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just coach to your, where did you see the most success for Jeff Sims? Getting outside the pocket, design quarterback runs, being able to roll out, make it easier to process stuff. When Jeff Sims made the mistakes, he was throwing from the pocket. And so I just wish that they would take this offense and say, hey, we're going to run this offense according to what our quarterbacks can do. And I feel like you just haven't. You saw some of that in Northern Illinois that I know you're going to talk about. But I feel like on a consistent basis, you haven't quite seen that yet.
Well, that's the first drive of that Northern Illinois game is almost
exactly right.
Carbon copy of what they need to be doing. It was You didn't really see any just pure pocket passes. It was play action. It was speed options. It was RPOs. It was just that type of offense I think you need to run when you don't have right now the playmakers in the offensive line to probably just run a straight up offensive attack. I think they're still building that talent and that depth up and that on that side of the football that they'll need to kind of maybe run that way. But right now they got to run it a little different. They got to execute some trickery, if you will.
That's also worth noting is this team is the talent's there, but it's banged up. I mean, Gabe Ervin Jr. out for the season, Ramir Johnson out for the season. So now you're going back to Anthony Grant, who I will say, I think Anthony Grant, I know this is probably going to be a hot take, but I think it's the truth. Anthony Grant's probably the most talented running back in that room. And I love Gabe Ervin Jr. I like Ramir Johnson. You guys hear him going to be bang the table for more Ramir Johnson. But if Anthony Grant can hold on to the football, he is probably the most dynamic running back that you have. He's going to have to. You don't have a choice now because he's a starting running back. Second of all, the wide receiver room. I mean, you've had multiple guys transfer out. IJC goes down with the season-ending injury. I mean, you take a look at the starting 3 wide receivers. Alex Bullock, who was a former walk-on, was a walk-on up until about 3 months ago, and that's no knock on him, solid player. Marcus Washington, who's been banged up, and then Billy Kemp, who they need to get more involved and kind of get him in space.
The ball way more. I think it's crazy that he's third on this team, and Marcus Washington's playing really pretty good. I think, and it's not no one's gonna have a ton of yards because the quarterback play is frankly not there, but somehow, some way, they need to get Billy Kemp in space a little bit, and that's like kind of the thing we're talking about is why not throw in some screens? I feel like I saw 1 or 2 in that game. Like, do something a little different than just – and it feels like eventually, like, at times they're doing it, and then they revert back to, well, we'll run a base kind of run scheme, and then we'll throw out of the pocket on 3rd and long. Like, that does feel like they get into that mode a little bit.
Too many of those.
Yeah, and I don't know how to, like, assess that. I feel like we've seen that from a lot of college teams that don't have necessarily an identity on offense, is that their play callers do kind of get stuck a little bit in ruts of just not really having answers.
The biggest mistake I think coordinators can make is not coaching to your players and like having the scheme. I think Jimbo Fisher probably the most guilty of it, where he ran that offense with Jameis Winston, one of the better college quarterbacks we've seen in the last 2 decades. It worked, and then he doesn't want to deviate from it. So he gets a different quarterback, says, you have to run this system. And he gets the next quarterback, you have to run the system because it worked when I was at Florida State in 2015. You got to be able to look at your guys and say, how can we best kind of get you guys in space or whatever it is and use you most effectively? Thomas Fidone is probably another guy that needs more touches, and you saw him come along in that Northern Illinois game. That is a really big body.
You want to play action, rip him up the seam like that. It's just things that, like, they look like at times they were able to confuse that defense a little bit, and again, use the guys who are effective playmakers like a Sims, like a Fidone, and get them loose and get them some touches in a way that doesn't necessarily require the offensive line to block for 4 seconds or
it's another thing.
That type of things that, again, the personnel, there's elements to this offense they just don't have. They don't have a quarterback who I think is going to go through a full progression and make the right decision consistently enough.
And you also don't have an offensive line. And I hate saying this because I thought this group would kind of come together. But as of right now, like, this offensive line is not going to be able to pass protect on 3rd and long. It just isn't. I know it sucks, and a lot of these guys are older, and you'd hope they were developed by now, but it just isn't what it is. So you got to find different ways to do it. Another couple of guys I want to shout out, Malachi Coleman. And I get Matt Rhule said he's not ready yet. He's still got to kind of understand that playbook. You're telling me you have to bring Tommy Hill to run that fly instead of Malachi Coleman, who's probably the fastest player on this team, or a guy like Jalen Lloyd? Get some of those guys. And again, like, what are they good at? And then go have them do something that they're good at. And that's kind of what you want to see. Now, kind of polar opposite, Dill, and we can change to kind of a lot of the good parts about this team. This Nebraska defense is going to allow this team to win a lot of football games in 2023. And partially the same things that we're kind of getting at Satterfield for, I think Tony White does a phenomenal job. If he looks at this defense, we're running that 3-3-5. We got a lot of different playmakers on this defense. What are you good at, and where can we put you on the field to let you be good at that? And I think you're seeing Tony White do a beautiful job of that.
And you're seeing guys. I mean, I think the big part of it is Hutmaker and Robinson are playing
dogs
at a high level right now.
Yes.
They're dominant in every game they've played, and that's allowed them to shut the run down in a way they really couldn't last year. So it's allowed, I think, this defense get a little more creative and use guys like Cameron Leonard and others to be blitzers and get after the quarterback again. And just while their offense never feels like they're putting teams on their heels, this defense is attacking constantly, and they're really playing at an incredibly high level. And I think the biggest thing you see is you pretty much do have the same guys they had last year. They're just all playing at a much higher level. They're playing in the spots it feels like, or just being put in positions to succeed. And that, again, that's what we talked with Matt Rhule coming in. That's what he's been really good at. And right now you're seeing it on the defensive side with him and what him and Tony White are doing.
Brother, that's the importance of coaching. And in my opinion, I think you're seeing it perfectly on this defense. Like, yeah, they took some guys, MJ Sherman in the portal, Chief Borders. You have some true freshmen or new faces. A lot of these guys were here last year, and they weren't playing that good last year. Now, all of a sudden, Matt Rhule, Tony White, they have this defense doing what it needs to do. I will say a caveat is this team on defense is much healthier and deeper, right? Like, you have a lot of guys. I'm surprised at the depth, especially in the front seven. Like, you got your notepad out, and you're, like, taking notes on a lot of different guys who are being cycled in and out, and they got a lot of playmakers who can do a lot of different things. And I think Tony White is really doing a phenomenal job at identifying what they do and putting them in those spots.
And that's what you got to, like, you're seeing guys like Gabayer come in and
Jamari Butler.
They're all coming in and making
Javen Wright.
Right, exactly. It's like you're seeing it from everybody I don't know. Like maybe they're identifying exactly this guy is the best fit for this moment in this game, and we're using them in something, whatever they're doing. Obviously, I'm not smart enough to necessarily know, like, identify that. I'm not, otherwise I'd be coaching Nebraska too. But
that's right.
Exactly. So it's like they're doing something right. It's very obvious that they have this whole unit playing at an incredibly high level. And again, I just want to preach, like, to have the same guys from last year and have this staff doing such a far superior job. That is like, that's a unit that can win a lot of football games in the Big Ten West if their offense would stop shooting themselves in the foot.
I don't see like Iowa or Illinois going 80 yards and scoring a touchdown on this team. So if you can, I mean, at this point, like a punt's a good thing. Like put this defense on the field. I think the turnovers are going to come too. Like you're starting to see it. They create a lot of havoc. Before we log out here, I do owe an apology here. Isaac Gifford, I was really critical on him in terms of like, can he play that rover spot? Is he athletic enough? And I think partially like last year, they had him on like man coverage against slot receivers. That's not his game. That being said, he's played this rover position, this jack of all trades position at such a high level. We said coming in, like the two most important positions are can you take on double teams up front in this 3-3-5 and can you rover, do everything that they're going to ask? And Isaac Gifford has done everything at an exceptional level. He has absolutely proven me wrong, emerging as one of my favorite players on this Nebraska team. And I think a large part of why this defense has been so good. Again, to kind of round out, the defense is going to keep this team like very competitive in the Big Ten West. If this offense can just start to click a little bit, maybe some young guys emerge. They're going to need to emerge with all the injuries that are happening. Like this team can win a lot of games. I think you're really excited about what Matt Rhule is building, even though it's obviously a 1 and 2 star is not what you were looking for. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys as usual. Nebraska fans, you guys show so much love. We appreciate it. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.